interesting that it doesn't seem to bother people in the world of the movies, in Hollywood somehow.
Yeah.
In the game industry, it's like, it was a big fuss about it. We were doing a game that was the game we wanted to make, which is a little bit like Arx Fatalis, which was our first game, escaping some sort of fortress, and in this case it was on a space station with aliens, so System Shock was probably our biggest influence. And then there was the name and the high level that matched in a way that, it's a first-person shooter, it's in space, there are aliens, and you have to escape a space station. And that's pretty much the only link between. We really treated it as a new IP.
We already had in mind the kind of game we were making.
Right.
And then Bethesda said, hey, what about using this name? And then admittedly, the name is really good. It's a really good name for a video game. And if you've ever been part of a discussion of trying to figure out what to call a video game, sometimes it's easy, but 99% of the time it's
very hard,
a big pain in the ass.
I mean, I don't know, like I played the original game and I enjoyed it, but like to me, the popularity around the word Prey seems to be more about the media circus which sort of enveloped it for the 4 years after that game came out, rather than actually the original game.
You might be right about that.
Right. It's a funny game to talk about because, like, in a way, I mean, we're literally sitting here having this conversation. You've probably had this conversation a dozen fucking times.
And people, the thing that people probably forgot is that even the original Prey was another Prey than the Prey that came out.
Right.
The one I'm talking like in 92 or 5 or something.
Yes,
there was another Prey.
Yeah. So it never ends. So 10 years from now, I'll be talking to someone else about their version of Prey. Right. It should be great. Let's talk a little bit about your influences, Dan. You mentioned System Shock. I mean, the connective tissue between Looking Glass Studios and Arcane via all of those, and just the Austin game scene and whatnot. What do you think it is about the type of game that you're creating, that sort of, inside of a space station, trying to explore, using different sort of mechanisms and being sort of oppressed? What is it about that you find exciting?
Well, it's exciting because if you're trying to create an experience that people are going to be immersed in, it's got to talk to them very, very closely without any filters and ambiguity. And so the more you can touch the primal motifs of a person, the more they're going to feel immersed in the experience. And in this case, being trapped somewhere where you have to survive and escape is like probably the thing that everybody connects to.
Right.
And so that as far as the theme, right? And then we have the theme on top of that also connect very well with people, which is if you were to wake up somewhere and you don't really know what happened, you want to know what happened. Like, why am I doing here? All this mystery. So it's all very personal at the end of the day. Survive and find out about yourself. So things that are very, very personal, as opposed to go and save the world, or which is a little more indirect and far-fetched.
Yeah. And the thing that I like that we're doing that's a little bit different than Dishonored is the fact that it's all just one big but self-contained environment.
Right.
It's not a mission-based game where you I explore this mission, I accomplish my objective, and then I leave and I go on to this new place. Instead, it's like the space station itself is just this one big, we called it a space dungeon at one point, basically. Mm-hmm. That presents interesting challenge, but you get this familiarity with the space, because you backtrack a lot and you discover new areas, and then you come back to a place that you've been to 3 times already, but now there's somebody new or something new there. I think the game that we've made really, really lends itself well to, okay, this time I'm going to play and I'm not going to use the glue gun. I'm going to just go all out alien powers, or this time I'm going to save this guy that I fed to the aliens the first time. So,
you mentioned the term immersive sim. It seems like one of these, I don't know what you call it, genre, subgenre, type of game that has an incredibly high success rate if it's sort of done well. But these games seem to be very few and far between, and they also seem incredibly difficult to make. Why is it that you think your team is so attuned to making these types of games?
I don't know why we still do that.
What are we doing?
It's so hard.
Yeah. We're announcing this is the last time we do it. No. I think part of it is just the DNA of the company, right? Arcane has been making these games for a while. But there's so many people on the team that come from other studios and other games. We have people that worked on Deus Ex. We have people that worked on System Shock, BioShock, people who love Thief. Credit for a game gets put on 1 or 2 people, but that's not really true. It's easy to say that, but we have so many people on our team, like amazing level designers and architects and artists that have worked on these other games that I mentioned, and I think that's why it's second nature for us.
Yeah, we pretty much the shelter for all the all the developers that are either from Looking Glass or Ironstorm or ex Irrational. They come to us because we are, I think, one of the only studios. I mean, I can probably think of another one, but we are one of the rare studios that are still making those games. Yeah. And the reason why we're making them is because I think a lot of artists do things that are reminiscent of what touched them when they were kids. And I think probably I don't know exactly what was your game that touched you, but in my case it was Ultima Underworld.
Right.
And just before that, Ultima 7. So the Ultimas and Ultima Underworld. That was like what made me realized that games were actually more than games. In fact, it's an ugly word. It's not really a game, and it's like an experience. It's it's because game sounds like a toy, like for kids, whereas those things are very, very immersive.
It's like a place.
It's a place. Yeah, you experience it. It's amazing. It makes you trouble. So that's, I think, stayed with me. And when I studied Arcane, it was very, very important for me that I would bring back those values that started to dissipate and disappear around with some other genres, and I think we've been the ones holding that flame for the genre.
Like one of the ways that I like to think about it is like you can get different experiences and feelings from games, but one experience is I figured out the solution to this puzzle, and there are a lot of games like that. But the thing that we do that I appreciate is feeling like I'm in a place where anything is possible.
Right.
The rational part of my brain knows that's not literally the case, but because the mechanics in the game are so open-ended and expressive, I feel like I could try anything and it might work. I don't know if I would call it realistic, but I guess it does feed into the world. The world behaves
rules.
according to rules,
right?
And if I learn those rules, then I can improvise on my own.
And those rules need to be consistent and always work. That's where your game changes into a set of verbs that you have, and with those, the level designers, because they're the ones at the end of the chain, and somehow they're making the game with all those rules, and then the systems make also the game on their own without any level designer intervention, and so all that combined makes that kind of simulation-y thing where, as a player, you're in this space and you know that. If you push a table, it's going to move. You know that, so it's your new reality, even though it's not realistic somehow. But it's like now it's your new world.
I mean, a good example is just the way the mimics in our game work. One approach could have been that like every single mimic is scripted to turn into objects, but the way that we approach it is the AI of the mimic. They just have a behavior that's like anytime you're in a room, you just take account of all the physics objects in the game and you select the one that is the most appropriate. And so what that results in is that even us as the developers can have fun with the game, because I don't know what the mimic is going to be when I walk into the room.
Right.
It's going to be totally something different this time.
Was there ever a case where mimics were turning into objects that just did not feel appropriate or were in the wrong part?
Yeah, sometimes if they're too big, right?
Like I remember that when we had this lamp, that was funny.
Yeah, so we made a rule that it needed to be something that was like roughly, plus or minus 20% the mass of the mimic itself. Okay. So it's like now it's like all the way from like a chair to like a shoe. Right. But they were turning into like huge like computer cabinets and stuff at some point.
Tiny things.
It just looked ridiculous. Yeah.
Like a key.
Yeah.
It's amazing to hear you're a massive fan of Ultima Underworld, considering you now, I mean, you're working in Richard Garriott's back garden.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Is that like prophetic in a way that you ended up there?
Yes, it was deliberate. It was part of my pilgrimage as a developer. I used to work for EA. And EA owned Origin back then, and I was and when I joined EA, I was lucky to join EA first of all, to join the video game industry. I'm 46, so back then there was no real path for it.
Right.
And I was a big fan of Richard Garriott and the Ultimas, and so I had a chance to at some point I said I need to go visit this guy, or because that's where I want to work. And so in '93 I think I came to Austin. It was my first time in America. Loved the place. It was a really great place in general. Loved to meet Origin and Richard. So that kind of stayed with me. And later on, the Ironstorm guys were there too, Harvey and Ricardo. And so eventually, I was always like coming back, maybe every 2 years, just as part of, hey, that's where they make cool games over there. and so we kind of became acquaintances. And a later friend.
Ricardo, what about yourself? I mean, Invisible War is a game that's definitely associated with you. What other games did you work on in the past?
Well, my entry into the industry is I basically hounded other developers. I grew up in Spain because my dad was in the Air Force. And so my introduction to video games was he brought home a Commodore 64 one day, and we were loading games on tapes. But I was playing all those like really old school RPGs, including Ultima, not Underworld, but the Ultima RPGs and Bard's Tale type games. I grew up watching my dad play those games, and then when he would fall asleep, I would jump on there and play. But no, when I graduated from college, eventually we moved back to the States, and when I graduated from college, I was like, I really want to make video games, but just like with Raf, there was no path, there's no like, go to video game school. And so I moved to Austin because I knew there were some companies there like Origin, and I was like writing people, like, can I get a tour of the office? Can I check out your, what's going on there? And then that's how I met Harvey. He wrote an article about orthogonal unit design or something like it was about AI, about how to design creatures for games. So it was really cool. I wrote him, and he actually wrote me back, and he said that you should learn how to use the Unreal Engine and blah blah blah. And so I started to do that, and then one day I finally got them to like let me actually have a tour of the Ion Storm offices. And I've told the story before, but like when I was there, they were giving me a tour of the office, and we were talking about games that we liked, and like, oh, I love Half-Life, and I love RPGs like Baldur's Gate, and I was like, I would love to play a game that was like a first-person action game. That I love first-person games like Half-Life and Doom, but I also wanted to have like RPG elements and just like more depth. And he like loaded up Deus Ex, and I was just like, oh my god, that is so awesome. I have to work here. And so I just kept working on learning Unreal, and eventually they hired me.
Yeah, that's a good match. They had a Deus Ex game and an Unreal game, so they probably needed people to put them all
so
together.
I was really, really fortunate that was like the first game that I got to work on. But the team was like 20 people.
Right,
so,
incredible.
So there was like, it was like me, Harvey, Monty Martinez and Steve Powers, who are level designers on our team right now.
Yeah, we have them.
And a couple other guys. There was like, I think there was just 20 people on the team total. So like, yeah, it was fun. It was a great experience. I was just like, I can't believe I'm doing this. I can't believe somebody's giving me money to, make up battles and characters, and so fun.
What is it about modern development that just makes team sizes so much bigger? Is it content? Is it like what is it that's...
I think it's fidelity, right? So you take a game like Deus Ex or Arx Fatalis, I could make some of the animations, I could make some of the objects. I mean, I was actually, some of the pies I was making myself.
There was just a level designer who did almost everything. Like built the level, did
you make it pretty,
did the lighting,
exactly.
Did the gameplay and the design of the level?
Back then, In fact, the first time we had to separate those two functions, the architect and the mission designer, it was a nightmare. Nobody knew where to begin, because it used to be one person, and now it's two, and so they both feel like out of control. It's because of fidelity, most of all. So you have to add more specialized people. That now it takes 10 days to make a chair, not 10 hours anymore. So,
are you excited to finally have the game out? Soon enough.
It's pretty nerve-wracking because you've been pouring your heart and soul into something for over 3 years, and now you're gonna like push it out and let other people see it. It's like somebody's gonna make fun of your kid or something like that.
And there's only one chance at that.
There's just one shot.
If it sucks, it sucks. If it's great, it's great. So.
I mean, we never want to let it go because there's always like, I want to just fix one more thing and add one more thing. So it's not, nothing will ever achieve the ideal of perfection in my head, but. A good sign to me is that like I really have a lot of fun playing the game.
There's also a line where like between it's not good enough to oh man it's so awesome and there's that line, this threshold where now if it ships we're to the point where I'm okay. I feel like okay. But I wish I could just like polish it forever and tune it, because it's those games are hard to tune and polish. There's a lot of possible permutations of stuff, so you want to try to address everything you can and make sure that people have a smooth experience. So any minute we can spend making the experience better, it will make us feel better when it ships. So that's probably my only caveat, is that we just want to be as perfect as possible.
Right.
My wish is that it appeals to new players that don't know anything about System Shock or Prey or anything. And I also hope and think that the players that are very, very much into the System Shock type of games, they're also going to dig it.